The Executive Chairman of Yellow Brick Road Home Loans, Mark Bouris. Mark, good to see you again. So what number do you expect the RBA to go with next week?
More than likely 0.5%, so a double rate rise. And the general consensus around the market, except for someone like Shane Oliver at AMP, the general consensus amongst the banks anyway and the money markets is we're going to see 50 basis points August, 50 basis points September, 50 basis points October, and another 50 basis points after that. So we've got another 2% rate rise between here and the end of the calendar year. That's the general consensus.
Now, what's that going to cost? From go to woe. I mean, if we're talking about, I'll help you out here. So there's a bit, I mean, and you'd correct me if I'm wrong. So from go to woe, 0.1% up to 3%. That's a couple of $1,000 people will have to find every month on an average loan, right?
Yeah, a couple of $1,000 after tax, by the way. So let's not forget that, a couple of $1,000 after tax. Plus, on top of that, we've got a cost of living, as we saw the inflation numbers, as you just mentioned, at 6.1%. Basically, the cost of living is much higher. I mean, that 6.1%, what's interesting about that, Pete, is that if you go and look at non-discretionary expenditure, in other words, the increase in things that you have to buy, food, rent, blah, 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 that's actually more than 6.1%. That's gone up by 7.8%. So on top of all your interest rate rises, if you're a mortgage holder or a borrower of any type, you've got a 7.8% increase as well in terms of your cost of living. So, and wages really haven't gone up. They're not going up by that much, unless you're in one of those environments where you can negotiate through trade unions, etc.
So what are you finding? I mean, you're at the coalface here. Mark, you know better than anyone what the punters are going with when it comes to seeking out a loan. What trends are emerging here at the moment? Is it slowing down?
Slowing down. So what we're seeing is a massive decrease in the clearance rates when it comes to auction. So those clients who we give a pre-approval to are going along to the auction to buy the property, and often the property, or in 50% of the cases, the property is not selling at auction, is either withdrawn or usually withdrawn by the vendor because the buyers are not meeting the vendor's expectations. There is a strong correlation between auction clearance rates and house price declines and or house price increases and unit price increases. So that correlation of 50% drop is quite substantial. And as a result of that, we are seeing house prices fall off. What's interesting to note is that Shane Oliver has said yesterday, I think it was, that if we increase our interest rates by 2% between here and Christmas time, that he expects to see a 25 to 30% decrease across the board in house prices.
Wow.
So, I mean, I don't want to carry on about this, but Pete, there are 3,085 different subclasses of houses in Australia. So CoreLogic has broken up Australia into 3,085 little sub-regions. And if you look across the board right now, there is 41% of those regions, those 3,000 regions, have actually shown a decrease in house prices or unit prices or dwelling prices. So this is significant. This is a big deal. And the Reserve Bank is obviously going to have to take that in their stride when they make their decisions between here and the end of the year.
Could the market collapse, Mark?
Well, the Reserve Bank's got control of this, and I don't think the Reserve Bank's going to try and collapse the market. I mean, it's not in their interest to collapse the market. It's not in their interest. It's in their interest, perhaps, to slow things down so much that we could end up in a technical recession like they're talking about in the US at the moment. But it's not in their interest to collapse an asset class, which is housing, which is so important to the Australian banking system. So they are in constant discussions with the regulator of the banks. They're in constant discussions with the government and the banking system and the banks themselves to make sure they don't jeopardise the value of houses across the whole marketplace, because that would be a disaster for us. So my gut feeling is they won't do that because it is too dangerous for our whole financial system, and we can't afford to do that. So they're in control. If they'll only go up to this position if they think that the housing market is not going to be negatively affected across the board in such a way that it's going to cause a loss of confidence in the Australian economy. And they don't have to put rates up, but that's what they're saying, that they will put rates up. That's what the market's saying they will put rates up to by the end of this year.
Sure. Okay, Mark Bouris, always good to chat. We'll talk to you again next week.